Lama, ele é o cônsul-geral adjunto da França. Já está no dispositivo o professor Dr. Carlos Gilberto Carlotti Jr, magnífico reitor da Universidade de São Paulo. O senhor François Romaneix, vice-presidente executivo do Instituto Pasteur. Professor Marco Antônio Zago, presidente da FAPESP e reitor da USP no período de 2014 a 2018. E a professora doutora Anísia Trindade de Lima, presidente da Fiocruz. Ouviremos agora as palavras de boas-vindas, professor Dr. Luís Carlos Ferreira, coordenador executivo da Plataforma Científica Pasteur.
Bom dia a todos. É com grande satisfação que nós estamos aqui reunidos para celebrar um acordo que remonta de uma ideia, um sonho que o professor Zago, em 2014, juntamente com o professor Ney Camargo, decidiram e foram à França com a ideia de trazer essa instituição, o Instituto Pasteur, como um parceiro de longa data para que nós pudéssemos construir, em parceria com a Fiocruz, uma relação que vai transcender as gestões que se passaram desde essa época e que vai marcar o futuro dessas instituições. It's a pleasure to host you and to receive all of you, including our friends from Pasteur Institute. And I'm just mentioning that I'm very thankful that from one dream once had by Dr. Zago, our previous rector, that also was supported by Dr. Vahan, the next dean after Dr. Zago, and also now presently by Dr. Carlotti, we now can continue with this mission that unite University of São Paulo, Instituto Pasteur, and Fundação Oswaldo Cruz in order to build something that will stay with us for the next generations and helping us to build stronger science and stronger support to health and also education for the students coming here and for the future. Thank you very much, and I hope you will enjoy very much all the activities we'll plan for today.
Registramos e agradecemos a presença do Dr. Carmino Souza, secretário executivo de Ciência, Pesquisa e Desenvolvimento em Saúde do Governo do Estado de São Paulo, Dr. Amador Sol, presidente da Rede Pasteur, Nadège Mézier, adido para a Ciência e Tecnologia do Consulado da França, professor Dr. Varran Gopian, reitor da Universidade de São Paulo na gestão de 2018 a 2022, professor Dr. Fernando Menezes, diretor administrativo da FAPESP, professor Dr. Marcos Garcia Neira, pró-reitor adjunto de graduação, professor Dr. Márcio de Castro Silva, pró-reitor de pós-graduação, professor Dr. Paulo Nussenweig, pró-reitor de pesquisa e inovação, professora doutora Miriam Debo Rosa, pró-reitora adjunta de inclusão e pertencimento, professor Dr. Sérgio Proença, presidente da agência USP de Cooperação Acadêmica Nacional e Internacional, professor Dr. Marcelo Zuff, coordenador do Inova USP, professor Dr. Marcílio Alves, diretor executivo da FUSP. Ouviremos agora as palavras de boas-vindas da professora Paola Minoprio, também coordenadora executiva da Plataforma Científica Pasteur.
Bonjour à tous, messieurs les secrétaires d'État, messieurs les consuls adjoint, général adjoint de la France, Madame la Présidente, Messieurs les recteurs, Monsieur Romaneix et Monsieur le Président de la FAPESP. Je suis très honorée et un peu émue parce que ça fait 7 ans que mon binôme et moi, Louis Carlos et moi-même, donnons tous nos efforts pour que cette journée puisse se réaliser. Nous sommes là aujourd'hui, très honorés de votre présence pour fêter avec nous pas seulement les 60 ans de la FAPESP, comme les 200 ans de la naissance de Louis Pasteur. Aujourd'hui, c'est une journée spéciale pour nous, car nous, les membres de la plateforme scientifique Pasteur, Université de São Paulo, tous les étudiants et les PIs, les chercheurs, sommes là pour célébrer les 3 premières années de cette plateforme. Nous remercions ici la présence de notre président du Pasteur Network, que c'est le réseau Pasteur, ainsi que la secrétaire exécutive de cette initiative, de ces réseaux qui nous appartenons depuis 2019. Et nous sommes très contents que vous allez partager avec nous cette fête d'aujourd'hui. Je vous remercie infiniment et je souhaite que nous ayons un énorme succès dans cette aventure. Merci.
Vamos agora ter a exibição do vídeo de palavras introdutórias da professora Françoise Barré-Sinoussi, presidente honorária da Rede Pasteur e laureada com o Prêmio Nobel de Fisiologia e Medicina em 2008.
Mesdames, Messieurs, chers collègues, j'ai l'honneur et le grand plaisir de me joindre virtuellement à vous pour cette journée de célébration non seulement du bicentenaire de la naissance de Louis Pasteur, mais aussi des 60 ans de la FAPESP ainsi que des 3 ans de la plateforme scientifique Pasteur, Université de São Paulo, 33e membre du Pasteur Network. Je souhaite tout d'abord adresser toutes mes félicitations au professeur Zago. Professeur, grâce à vous, la FAPESP est aujourd'hui reconnue comme l'un des partenaires incontournables vers lequel se tournent autant les jeunes chercheurs que les plus expérimentés. La FAPESP, qui est le plus important bailleur institutionnel pour la recherche de l'État de São Paulo, soutient la science au profit de la lutte contre les maladies infectieuses émergentes et réémergentes. À ce titre, la FAPESP occupe une place centrale dans le développement et le succès de la plateforme scientifique Pasteur USP sans votre soutien et sans votre engagement personnel et ceux du professeur Celso Lafer lors des toutes premières discussions, la plateforme scientifique Pasteur Université de São Paulo n'aurait pas pu voir le jour ni s'ancrer dans le paysage scientifique de l'État de São Paulo. Je souhaite également féliciter le professeur Carlotti pour sa récente nomination en tant que recteur de l'Université de São Paulo, partenaire précieux de l'Institut Pasteur au Brésil, avec lequel de liens solides se sont tissés. Professeur, c'est en effet grâce au soutien de l'Université de São Paulo, des professeurs Erné, Plesman de Camargo, Raúl Machado et de toute votre équipe que la plateforme est aujourd'hui reconnue comme partenaire de référence. Ses excellents résultats et sa contribution exemplaire en matière de santé publique lors de la crise de la Covid-19 en témoignent. Vous le savez, les actions en matière de santé publique sont au cœur des valeurs pasteuriennes partagées par tous les membres du Pasteur Network. La plateforme scientifique Pasteur USP, actuellement membre associé du Pasteur Network de par sa très récente création, a trouvé toute sa place au sein de ce réseau et est appelée, je n'en doute pas, à en devenir très rapidement un membre à part entière. Mesdames, Messieurs, chacun de vous ici connaît toute l'importance des collaborations nationales et internationales dans le domaine scientifique. Elles sont à l'origine de découvertes et d'innovations au service de la santé des populations. L'initiative pasteurienne au Brésil, qui englobe son partenaire historique, la Fiocruz et l'Université de São Paulo, illustre parfaitement cette approche collaborative, axée sur la santé mondiale et basée sur le principe des 3 C qui m'est cher: compétence, complémentarité et confiance. Ce sont là les gages du succès. C'est selon ce principe des 3 C que les docteurs Luís Carlos de Souza Ferreira et Paola Minoprio ont développé la plateforme scientifique Pasteur, Université de São Paulo. Ils en assurent brillamment la coordination, alors permettez-moi de saluer leur engagement et de les féliciter chaleureusement. Mesdames, Messieurs, le projet d'Institut Pasteur au Brésil s'ancre dans les relations historiques entre la France et le Brésil, mais aussi dans les relations personnelles fortes de Dom Pedro II et de Louis Pasteur. Notre présence aujourd'hui s'inspire de cet héritage pour le transcender. Le Brésil et la France sont indéniablement des partenaires scientifiques de premier plan. Force est de constater que depuis 2016, les 2 partenariats bilatéraux, Université de São Paulo, Institut Pasteur et Fiocruz, Institut Pasteur, ont été porteurs. Ils se sont concrétisés par plus de 220 copublications et pour la plateforme scientifique Pasteur USP, plus de 60 publications en 2 ans d'activité seulement. Ainsi, nos partenariats au Brésil gagnent en visibilité et se consolident un peu plus chaque jour. Je m'en réjouis d'en célébrer avec vous aujourd'hui une nouvelle étape. Mesdames, Messieurs, votre soutien à la coopération de l'Institut Pasteur au Brésil et votre confiance sont précieux. Je terminerai donc en vous souhaitant de mener à bien l'évolution de ce projet ambitieux basé sur la recherche de solutions tous ensemble au bénéfice de la santé et du bien-être des populations. Dans un monde qui a tendance à se refermer sur lui-même, les collaborations scientifiques sont un espace de liberté qu'il faut absolument préserver. Je vous remercie.
Ouviremos agora com o tema Universidade de São Paulo e a busca pela excelência em inovação científica e tecnológica. O professor Dr. Carlos Gilberto Carlotti Jr, magnífico reitor da USP.
Bonjour, mesdames, messieurs. Je voudrais saluer professeur Louis Carlos, professeur Paola, professeur Zago, professeur Nízia Trindade, professeur François Romaneix et toute la délégation de l'Institut Pasteur. C'est un grand plaisir de vous accueillir sur le campus de l'Université de São Paulo. Nous fêtons ensemble l'anniversaire de 200 ans à la naissance de Louis Pasteur et les 60 ans de notre fondation de soutien à la recherche FAPESP. L'Université de São Paulo est plus de 100 ans plus jeune que M. Pasteur. Elle a été créée en 1934. Plusieurs savants français ont contribué à la fondation de notre université et nous en sommes toujours reconnaissants. Notre université est aujourd'hui parmi les plus importantes au monde, avec une riche histoire de recherche, d'enseignement et de culture. La France est l'un des plus prochains partenaires, avec des collaborations dans tous les domaines des savoirs. Nous avons pris en charge l'administration de cette université en janvier dernier, avec quelques priorités. Le Brésil est un pays de forte inégalité sociale et inégalité raciale et nous ne pouvons pas le négliger. Depuis quelques années, nous travaillons pour accueillir de plus en plus d'étudiants qui viennent des lycées publics où les conditions d'apprentissage sont moins favorisées. L'inclusion sociale, la valorisation et le respect à la diversité sont nos priorités. Nous avons créé un bureau de l'administration pour faire face à ces défis. la Pró-Reitoria de Inclusão e Pertencimento. Nous avons également choisi innovation comme priorité. Notre université a une très riche histoire et une tradition de découvertes scientifiques. Mais il faut augmenter notre interaction avec les gouvernements et avec les secteurs privés pour créer plus d'impact dans la société. La contribution des universités à l'innovation est importante à cause de que nous sommes capables d'apporter des connaissances approfondies et des jeunes avec beaucoup de talent. Je veux dire que nous ne renonçons jamais au développement de sciences basées sur notre curiosité. En effet, nous suivons ce que M. Pasteur a dit lui-même. Il n'existe pas une catégorie de sciences auquel on puisse donner le nom de sciences appliquées. Il y a à la science et les applications de la science, liées entre elles comme le fruit à l'arbre qui l'a porté. Il nous sera difficile de trouver un partenaire avec qui ont portage plus de valeurs en commun. En effet, l'Institut Pasteur développe de la recherche fondamentale d'excellence dans la science de la vie et même temps que attention à la santé publique fait part de ses missions primaires. Recherche et innovation sont développées ensemble, bras dans les bras. De plus, c'est une institution présente dans plusieurs continents, dans plusieurs endroits, une institution qui valorise la diversité humaine. Encore une fois, nous rappelons M. Pasteur. La science n'a pas de patrie, parce que le savoir est le patrimoine de l'humanité, le flambeau qui éclaire le monde. Pendant ces années difficiles de pandémie, la plateforme Pasteur à l'Université de São Paulo a rejoint nos efforts pour faire face au virus. Nous allons écouter plus tard quelques exploits réalisés ici. Mais nous n'avons dû faire face seulement à un virus. Nous avons fait face à la négation de la science, à la résistance à porter des masques et des informations fausses sur les vaccins. Cela nous obligeait à être plus attentifs, à travailler ensemble avec d'autres organisations qui savent valoriser la science, les combattre des faux prophètes. Nous sommes certains que le chemin que nous avons choisi d'élargir et approfondir nos collaborations internationales nous va mener vers un monde meilleur, avec du développement plus durable et plus juste. Soyez toutes et tous bienvenus à l'Université de São Paulo. Nous voulons que vous restiez ici pour longtemps, pour une collaboration de plus en plus importante. Merci de votre attention. I'm sorry for my French accent.
Ouviremos agora as palavras com o tema Colaborações envolvendo Instituto Pasteur, USP e FAPESP. O senhor François Romaneix, vice-presidente executivo do Instituto Pasteur.
Messieurs les secrétaires d'État, Madame l'ambassadrice représentée par Monsieur le consul général adjoint, cher Christophe, Monsieur le recteur, cher professeur Carlotti, Madame la vice-rectrice, Messieurs les pro-recteurs, Monsieur le président de la FAPESP, cher professeur Zago, Madame la présidente de la FIOPOS, cher professeur Nisia, cher Paola, cher Luís, chers collègues, chers amis. C'est avec un peu, je vais sortir de mon discours pour commencer parce que c'est avec un peu d'émotion que je suis ici aujourd'hui. Je me rappelle, il y a 3 ans, nous étions là-haut, professeur Varan, et nous avons inauguré cette plateforme et c'est un honneur, un plaisir d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui. Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé depuis ? Comme eu la pandémie, la Covid, et je crois que ça a pu illustrer, si besoin en était, c'est pas besoin pour nous, mais pas pour une partie du public et parfois des décideurs, l'importance de la lutte contre les maladies infectieuses. Le professeur Stewart Cole, directeur général de l'Institut Pasteur que je représente, s'adressera tout à l'heure par vidéo à vous. Mais j'aimerais, quant à moi, faire écho aux belles paroles que vous venez d'entendre de la part du professeur Barré-Sinoussi, qui souligne l'importance de nos partenariats au Brésil, avec principalement l'USP et la Fiocruz. Je vous remercie tout particulièrement, professeur Carlotti, d'accueillir cette réunion, des mots que vous avez prononcés, de votre soutien personnel et de celui de toute votre équipe, ainsi que du support de la précédente administration de l'université, professeur Varan. Sans cet appui, la plateforme scientifique Pasteur-USP n'aurait pas pu devenir la coopération emblématique qu'elle est aujourd'hui. L'Université de São Paulo, une des universités, l'université la plus prestigieuse d'Amérique latine, est un partenaire de choix pour l'Institut Pasteur, dont nous partageons, vous l'avez dit, les valeurs. Donc nous tirons également les mêmes leçons que vous, professeur Carlotti, de la crise et de la pandémie. Professeur Zago, je voudrais saisir cette occasion pour saluer l'impact de votre institution sur le paysage scientifique de l'État de São Paulo. Votre vision stratégique pour le développement de la science, avec une attention particulière aux partenariats internationaux, a montré de fructueux résultats. Je tenais également à vous dire combien nous apprécions le lien spécial qui existe entre nos deux institutions et la relation de confiance et j'ose dire d'amitié qui s'est tissée entre nous. Votre soutien constant au développement de notre coopération avec l'Université de São Paulo a permis à la plateforme scientifique de se propulser vers son plein potentiel. L'accompagnement de l'ambassade de France et du consulat général a également été une aide décisive pour l'avancement de ce projet depuis la première chaire remportée par Minoprio jusqu'à aujourd'hui et nous savons que nous pouvons compter sur votre appui à l'avenir. Nous vous en remercions. Depuis l'inauguration dont je parlais tout à l'heure de la plateforme en 2019, des étapes clés ont été franchies. Des résultats très probants ont été obtenus, notamment lors de la pandémie, je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, mais aussi dans d'autres domaines. Un des éléments clés de notre coopération est le recrutement sur appel d'offres compétitif de jeunes chercheurs pour un mandat de 4 ans, ce que nous appelons les G4. Ils sont d'excellents instruments dans le soutien de toute coopération scientifique. Ainsi, et toujours dans cet esprit collaboratif, l'USP, la FAPESP et l'Institut Pasteur ont signé l'année dernière un nouvel accord pour le lancement dès cette année de 3 G4 avec un cofinancement important de la FAPESP, que je remercie pour cet engagement fort. Ces G4 apporteront de nouveaux projets, maintiendront le niveau d'excellence de notre coopération bilatérale, mais aussi formera les prochaines générations de scientifiques en mettant l'accent sur l'internationalisation de la science au profit de la santé publique mondiale. Par ailleurs, je n'oublie pas bien sûr la présence de la présidente de la Fiocruz qui témoigne de l'importance des liens qui nous unissent à cette institution et de ce partenariat. L'Institut Pasteur est également impliqué dans le projet de la Fiocruz à Fortaleza et j'espère que nous pourrons désormais avancer dans la concrétisation de ce projet. Nous vous attendons, cher professeur Nisia, en septembre à Paris pour avancer dans cette optique. Enfin, et comme cela sera discuté cet après-midi, lors du symposium scientifique, de grandes opportunités existent concernant les projets transfrontaliers entre le Brésil et la Guyane française, réunissant la FAPESP, la SPPU, la Fiocruz et les instituts de Pasteur et de Guyane, dont je salue le directeur, cher Christophe. Ces projets devraient avoir un impact substantiel pour la région et soutiendront autant l'ancrage régional de la SPPU que la stratégie d'internationalisation de la FAPESP. Chers collègues, je tiens à vous assurer du plein soutien de l'Institut Pasteur dans l'ensemble de ses réalisations à venir. Je souhaiterais également saluer chaleureusement le Dr Amadou Sall, président du Pasteur Network, ainsi que le Dr Rebecca Gress, directeur exécutif du Pasteur Network, et le remercier pour leur engagement et leur présence aujourd'hui. La plateforme scientifique Pasteur-USP, actuellement membre associé du Pasteur Network, est appelée très prochainement, je l'espère, à en devenir membre de plein droit. Enfin, vous le savez, toute coopération réussie repose sur l'engagement de femmes et d'hommes. Je souhaite adresser un remerciement particulier à Jennifer Hurley, directrice internationale de l'Institut Pasteur, et bien sûr à Paola et Luís. Sans eux, nous ne serions sans doute pas là aujourd'hui. Nous ne serions pas là. Vous le savez, Paola et Luís ont coordonné toute la mise en place de ce projet ambitieux et bien sûr l'organisation de cette cérémonie d'anniversaire. Mesdames, Messieurs, je suis ravi de participer à ce moment historique dans le renforcement de la collaboration stratégique entre l'État de São Paulo, l'Université de São Paulo et l'Institut Pasteur. Nous allons signer une déclaration d'intention entre ces 3 partenaires sous le patronage de Madame l'ambassadrice de France au Brésil. Ce pas décisif consolide notre coopération avec l'Université de São Paulo. Mesdames et messieurs, je voudrais terminer en vous remerciant sincèrement pour votre participation à cette journée de célébration. Votre présence assure le succès de cet événement. Je souhaite également remercier tous les chercheurs, les étudiants de la SPPU qui se sont mobilisés pour l'organisation de cet événement. Je vous souhaite à tous une journée riche en échanges. Il ne me reste plus qu'à, attention la professeure Carlotti, desejar a SPPU et a nossos parceiros todos as votos de sucesso nesta nova e rica aventura. Obrigada.
Obrigada. Anunciamos agora as palavras do senhor Christophe Alemelamá. Ele é o cônsul adjunto da França em São Paulo, que está representando a senhora Brigitte Collet, embaixadora da França no Brasil.
Bon dia à todos. Tout d'abord, excusez-moi si ma voix s'affaiblit. Je suis affecté depuis quelques jours par une pneumopathie non contagieuse. Et je crois que la période est un petit peu difficile sur le plan médical pour beaucoup de monde. Monsieur le secrétaire d'État, monsieur le recteur de l'Université de São Paulo, Gilberto Carlotti Jr, monsieur le président de la FAPESP, Marco Antonio Zago, madame la présidente de la Fiocruz, Nicia Trindade de Lima, monsieur le directeur général adjoint de l'Institut Pasteur, François Romaneix, et mesdames et messieurs les représentants du Pasteur Network, madame et monsieur les coordinateurs de la plateforme scientifique Pasteur USP, Paola Minoprio et Luís Carlos de Souza Ferreira, mesdames et messieurs les chercheurs, mesdames et messieurs, chers amis. Madame Brigitte Collet, ambassadrice de France au Brésil, se faisait une joie d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui. Un virus maintenant bien célèbre l'en a empêché. Je la représente donc et suis ravi d'être avec vous ici aujourd'hui sur le campus de l'Université de São Paulo au sein de la plateforme scientifique Pasteur USP. Nous sommes réunis pour célébrer votre travail, celui réalisé par les étudiants et les chercheurs de la plateforme depuis son inauguration en juillet 2019, ainsi que le nouveau chemin qui se dessine. Nous sommes aussi ici pour commémorer 2 anniversaires d'importance, les 200 ans de la naissance de Louis Pasteur et les 60 ans de la FAPESP, qui jouent un rôle essentiel en appui de la recherche dans l'État de São Paulo. Pasteur soulignait que la science n'a pas de patrie, parce que le savoir est le patrimoine de l'humanité. Il affirmait que la science naissait du culte de l'esprit critique, de la capacité à s'étonner, du travail acharné, de l'engagement. C'est justement la science qui nous réunit aujourd'hui. C'est elle que nous célébrons alors que les 2 dernières années l'ont vue malmenée dans de nombreux pays par des personnes qui voudraient placer de simples opinions au même rang que le travail minutieux, rigoureux, exigeant mené par des chercheurs. C'est cette science que nous voulons voir renforcée par des partenariats comme celui-ci pour contribuer à ouvrir de nouvelles brèches, chercher de nouvelles réponses, développer de nouvelles solutions au service du plus grand nombre. Bienfaiteur de l'humanité, c'est ainsi que Louis Pasteur est aujourd'hui présenté. Il naît en 1822. Tout jeune, il montre un talent pour la peinture, mais c'est à la science qu'il va dédier sa vie. Il écrit parmi les pages les plus célèbres de l'histoire des sciences. On lui doit la découverte des microbes, du staphylocoque, du procédé de pasteurisation et au fait qui lui est à jamais associé le vaccin contre la rage. Nous tous savons ici qu'au nom de Louis Pasteur répondent au Brésil les noms de Dom Pedro II, d'Osvaldo Cruz ou encore de Carlos Chagas. Louis Pasteur et Dom Pedro II se portaient considération et estime dont porte trace leur correspondance. Dom Pedro II a été, par son mécénat, un de ceux qui ont permis à l'Institut Pasteur de voir le jour en 1888. Un buste de marbre en son honneur trône dans le musée Pasteur à Paris. Nous nous réjouissons donc de savoir qu'aujourd'hui un buste de Louis Pasteur, lui qui n'a jamais pu se rendre au Brésil, malgré l'invitation de Dom Pedro II, prend place ici à São Paulo, sur le campus de l'USP. Il vient sceller l'alliance entre l'Institut Pasteur et l'USP, la France et le Brésil, une alliance qui ne s'est jamais essoufflée. La fondation Oswaldo Cruz a été ainsi créée en s'inspirant du modèle de l'Institut Pasteur, alliant recherche et production de remèdes, et elle en est devenue un partenaire historique. La plateforme Pasteur Fiocruz CRA, qui sera développée à Fortaleza, grâce à un expert technique international cofinancé par la France, viendra renforcer notre collaboration. Avec l'USP, les liens sont également anciens. Luís Idelbrando Pereira da Silva, qui a fait ses études de médecine en parasitologie à l'USP, s'est exilé en France, où il est resté 33 ans à l'Institut Pasteur. Autre pasteurienne franco-brésilienne, un peu plus près de nous maintenant, Minoprio, avec 35 ans de maison Pasteur, également formée à l'USP dans le département de parasitologie, auprès d'Ernest Plessman, lequel avait fait un post-doctorat à l'Institut Pasteur. C'est elle qui, à 7 ans, a été missionnée au Brésil pour aider à la création d'un Institut Pasteur. Mesdames et messieurs, le concept d'une seule santé, One Health, défendu par la France, par l'Organisation mondiale de la santé, par la plateforme Pasteur-USP, souligne que la santé humaine est intimement liée à la santé animale et qu'elles sont toutes deux inséparables de celle de la nature. La pandémie de Covid-19 en est une illustration, comme avant elle, d'autres zoonoses que sont le Zika, l'Ebola, la grippe aviaire ou le sida. Le changement climatique, la perte de biodiversité, la pollution multiplient les risques sanitaires. L'émergence de virus ou de bactéries pathogènes pour l'humain, j'en sais quelque chose, va augmenter dans les années à venir et nous devons absolument investir dans la prévention de ces maladies. Ce combat doit être mené de front avec celui pour protéger notre planète. Ils doivent être menés collectivement, solidairement, car ces défis ne connaissent pas de frontières. C'est ce que la diplomatie française défend dans les enceintes internationales et à travers de partenariats concrets. La présence au Brésil d'organismes de recherche français pionniers sur ces questions, comme l'Institut Pasteur, l'IRD ou le CIRAD, nous permet d'envisager une coopération forte de nos deux pays, grâce au partage de données, la mise en commun de compétences, le suivi de cohortes, l'échange de bonnes pratiques. Les collaborations internationales sont une des clés du progrès de la recherche, des thérapies et des soins. La création de l'Institut Pasteur de São Paulo, avec son approche basée sur le concept de One Health, va venir enrichir l'écosystème de recherche et d'innovation en santé pauliste, déjà de tout premier ordre. Au sein de la plateforme scientifique Pasteur-USP, la coopération internationale s'est réalisée sous la forme d'une coordination conjointe par Paola Minoprio pour l'Institut Pasteur et Luís Carlos de Souza Ferreira pour l'USP. Le travail admirable que vous menez depuis 2019 est aujourd'hui récompensé. Je voudrais aussi saluer tous ceux qui travaillent et étudient au sein de la plateforme scientifique Pasteur-USP, les techniciens, les étudiants, les chercheurs, qui ont durant toute la pandémie, sans relâche, ont contribué à l'effort collectif à travers la réalisation de tests de dépistage de la Covid-19 et l'étude de ce nouveau coronavirus. Je souhaite enfin vivement remercier nos partenaires brésiliens qui travaillent à nos côtés pour rendre possible la naissance de l'Institut Pasteur de São Paulo, l'Université de São Paulo à travers son recteur Gilberto Carlotti Jr, la FAPESP à travers son président Marco Antonio Zago, que je sais engagé depuis les débuts de l'aventure, le gouvernement de l'État de São Paulo à travers le gouverneur Rodrigo Garcia. Face à tous les défis qui nous attendent, ceux administratifs de la mise en place de l'Institut, ceux scientifiques, beaucoup plus nombreux, de chercher des réponses à tant de nouveaux problèmes, j'aimerais encore citer Louis Pasteur, qui voyait dans le dialogue entre les peuples un enrichissement perpétuel. Il disait que le plus beau mot légué par la langue grecque à la langue française et à la langue portugaise était enthousiasme. C'est cet enthousiasme qui a été la force motrice de Louis Pasteur et que je sens chez vous. C'est lui qui vous permettra de faire face à ces défis et à tous les autres qui se présenteront. Longue vie à la coopération franco-brésilienne. Voilà, ce sont les mots de Brigitte Collet, ambassadrice de France au Brésil.
Obrigada. Registramos também a presença do senhor André Totino Vieira, diretor de Assuntos Governamentais da Sanofi. Teremos agora com o tema Parcerias envolvendo FAPESP e França as palavras do professor Dr. Marco Antônio Zago.
Ok. Bonjour à tous, mes amis. On m'a donné le choix de parler en portugais, anglais ou français. Parce qu'il y a traduction simultanée. Mais nous connaissons bien l'expression des Italiens. Traduttori, traditori. Alors, j'ai choisi la langue universelle de communication scientifique, et c'est bad English. So, Paula Minoprio and Carlos Ferreira, thank you for this kind of invitation. I'm very glad to participating in this commemoration. I wish to greet our director, the Professor of the University of São Paulo, Gilberto Carlotti, and all the authorities here. But do not forget Professor Barré-Sinoussi, who took this initiative and brought it recently. I wish also to Dr. Carmen Souza, Undersecretary of Science and Technology, State Government, and François Romaneix, General Adjunct Director of the Institut. We have been a great friend of the initiative along the years, and together with the staff and all members of the Pasteur Institute have made a very strong effort in favor of the initiative and also for the members of the institution and our partner, Physiology, President. Brazil and France have a long history of political, artistic, and scientific and collaboration. We started at colonial and extends to this day. We all heard already about the friendship between the most prominent man of science, Louis Pasteur, whose bicentennial, and the emperor of the center. France and French scientists were the most important foreign establishment of the 19th century. The first research university in whose headquarters strengths of this collaboration. But we cannot forget that during the 20 years of military dictatorship, France was a safe port for many Brazilian intellectuals, journalists, writers, and scientists. Among them, Fernando Henrique Cardoso, and scientists such as who found the opportunity to follow their scientific career because they were welcome at the Pasteur Institute. Both of them came from pursue a product career here in Brazil, focused on infectious diseases. But they never, they always kept links with France. So the academic collaboration with France is not only a pragmatic solution to get out of society, but it is also a political stance of relating with the country that strongly promotes the future of respect for human rights, for democracy. So, scientific partnership between institutions of the state of São Paulo and France have been actively promoted for decades as part of this more ample positive view. And FAPESP has been part of this picture since its beginning, 1960. Thus, I am very glad to be here and say that we appreciate very much the reference to the 60th anniversary, especially because you linked it with the bicentenary of Pasteur's. There are many possible ways to summarize the history of this international collaboration. I will start with FAPESP Week in 2019, which was promoted in Lyon in a partnership with the University of Lyon, and in Paris in a partnership with the newly established University of Paris in the campus of Romaneix. The meetings involved the presentations and discussion by 70 researchers from France and from São Paulo. Many are here. Showing results of joint researches or the planning for new projects. It was a success, both by results presented during the meeting, but also for the further opportunities, as for instance, the joint agreement signed with FAPESP, de l'École de Hautes Sciences Sociales, and the agreement for joint research calls. The other obvious link between the state of São Paulo and France is the platform of the University of São Paulo. The negotiations to establish these were complex and started 11 years ago. This is not a surprise because both Pasteur and the USP are traditional institutions, very conservative in the way they operate. But they also are very daring when it comes to their mission and in the way they organize research. We will not deal in the difficulties, but instead, I think we must commemorate success. Thus far, USP, Pasteur, and FAPESP have been financial and political sponsors of this stage. But in addition to the support in the form of regular or semester projects, we recently opened, as said, opened an international call whose objective is to attract young investigators to come and start their career doing research in this. But we must commemorate also because today we had a new powerful supporter, which is the government. At this moment, the scientific platform Pasteur represents the most prominent example of French-Brazilian cooperation in science and technology. At this moment, we are working together to expand and make more permanent financial support. A third Brazilian institution with a respectable history in the field of infectious disease, both diagnosis and related health issues, is the Fiocruz Institute, that has also joined these negotiations. Since we aim at establishing a tripartite of research institutions focused on infectious disease. Along the years, FAPESP has formed an impressive record of research projects in cooperation with French universities and research institutions and agencies. There are more than 100 research projects and 100 fellowships awarded by FAPESP in those agreements. The most frequent partners were Agence Nationale de la Recherche, CNRS, ANSERM, Université de Lyon. This record does not include hundreds of PhD and postdoctoral students who obtained their training. As a consequence of this intense exchange and joint research project, France is one of the top 4 partners of Brazil in international collaboration, if you count joint published articles. And more important, the normalized impact of these publications is 1.23, as compared to 0.72 for those with only Brazilian, but also is 1.17 for those in collaboration with USA. So it's higher. In the recent years, FAPESP has promoted also a vigorous program of partnership with companies or other big foundations called engineering research centers, which promotes the collaboration between industry and university. The company co-finances, together with FAPESP, a research center hosted in a university or research institute. In this case, it's a long support for up to 10 years. And at the moment, there are 21 centers operating. One of them is a collaboration between FAPESP and the former French company, Peugeot-Citroën, which started in 2014 and is programmed to end this year, dedicated to research for the advanced ethanol fueled engines. At present, we are also engaged in negotiations with different French agencies aiming at expanding our collaborations. One of the initiatives is to strengthen cooperation in oceanographic research by establishing a consortium between CNRS, FAPESP, and the University of Buenos Aires. A proposal that comes in a moment when the UN conference on the oceans that ended last week in Lisbon points to the critical need of more advanced research to minimize the so-called crisis of the oceans. Another focus is the research in human science. Cooperation between the State of São Paulo and France has been always very strong in human sciences, with an effort to set up a working group of French and Brazilian researchers. Finally, there are also negotiations in course with FAPESP and the COFEP to make an effort to expand the present agreement with the State of São Paulo, which at the moment is limited to USP, to include the other universities and the research institutes, transferring the financial responsibility of supporting the program to FAPESP. Thus far, we looked specifically to FAPESP cooperation. The results would be much more amplified if you looked at the combined action of the universities and the research institutes in the State of São Paulo. For instance, in the period that I was at São Paulo, we promoted 3 joint conferences with the University of Lyon, 2 conferences together with the University of established a bilateral representation of the USP at the University of and the representation of the DIDO at the USP. An international partnership which is very active today between USP, University of Lyon, for teaching law. On the part of USP, this initiative is coordinated by Professor Fernando Menezes, one of the directors here and Dr. Afternoon. So, as you can appreciate by this brief summary, we are dealing with a relationship that is continuously changing and expanding. As happens with a collaboration that is very alive and covering a wide range of subjects and the agencies, universities, and the research institutions. So I should mention, obviously, the French General Consulate. It has always been a strong supporter of this initiative. So I wish to thank Christopher Alain Milana, who is representing the French Embassy for this partnership, General Consulate in São Paulo. The successive consuls, deputy consuls, and the scientific and cultural attachés have always played a central role to promote and facilitate. I am not optimistic, but simply, I'd say, realistic when I forecast scientific collaboration between France and the state of São Paulo will continue to grow in the coming years. Thank you very much. Merci.
Ouviremos agora as palavras da professora Paola Minoprio.
Obrigada a todos vocês por essa sessão. Eu gostaria de informar vocês que nós vamos fazer um pequeno coffee break. Nós teremos algumas autoridades que estão chegando nesse momento e nós passaremos logo a seguir a cerimônia de assinatura dos acordos de renovação da plataforma científica Pasteur USP, como também a declaração de intenção do governo de São Paulo, da Universidade de São Paulo e do Instituto Pasteur para essa nova aventura, essa nova etapa das nossas relações de cooperação. E teremos logo a seguir a inauguração do busto Pasteur. Então, agradeço a vocês de passarem ao coffee break. Obrigada.
Sou secretário executivo de Relações Internacionais, neste ato representando o governador do Estado de São Paulo, Rodrigo Garcia, professor Dr. Raul Gonzalez Lima, pró-reitor adjunto de Inovação, professor Dr. Luís Henrique Catalani, coordenador da Agência USP de Inovação, professora doutora Patrícia Gama, diretora do Instituto de Ciências Biomédicas, e Adriana Fragali, procuradora-geral adjunta. Compõem esse nosso dispositivo de honra o Dr. Jean Gorenstein, o embaixador Afonso Massot, secretário executivo de Relações Internacionais do Governo do Estado de São Paulo, professor Carlos Gilberto Carlotti Jr., magnífico reitor, François Romaneix, vice-presidente executivo do Instituto Pasteur, e a professora Nízia Trindade de Lima, presidente da Fiocruz. Vamos, nesse momento, realizar a assinatura da Declaração de Intenções para a criação do Instituto Pasteur, São Paulo. Assinam um documento, ao qual eu chamo para compor aqui a mesa, o embaixador Afonso Massot, secretário executivo de Relações Internacionais do Governo do Estado de São Paulo, neste ato representando o senhor Rodrigo Garcia, governador do Estado de São Paulo. Professor Gilberto Carlotti Jr, magnífico reitor, e o senhor François Romaneix, vice-presidente executivo do Instituto Pasteur. Ouviremos, então, as palavras do embaixador Afonso Massot, secretário executivo de Relações Internacionais do Governo do Estado de São Paulo.
Bom dia a todos e todas. Em nome do governador do Estado de São Paulo, Rodrigo Garcia, o qual tenho a honra de representar, cumprimento as autoridades francesas aqui presentes, o reitor da Universidade de São Paulo, Gilberto Carlotti, o secretário de Saúde do governo do Estado, Jean Gorenstein, o diretor-geral adjunto do Instituto Pasteur de Paris, François Romaneix, em nome de quem cumprimento as demais pessoas aqui presentes. É um grande prazer para mim poder participar deste momento em que comemoramos os 200 anos do nascimento de Louis Pasteur, os 60 anos da Fundação de Amparo e Pesquisa do Estado de São Paulo, FAPESP, e realizamos a assinatura de uma declaração tripartite entre o governo de São Paulo, a Universidade de São Paulo e o Instituto Pasteur de Paris. Esta declaração tem como objetivo reafirmar nossa intenção conjunta de estabelecer e viabilizar uma unidade do Instituto Pasteur em São Paulo. O vínculo do Instituto com o Brasil é antigo, e não posso deixar de recordar não somente a amizade pessoal e a afinidade intelectual estabelecida no século XIX entre o nosso chefe de Estado de então, o imperador Dom Pedro II do Brasil, e Louis Pasteur, mas também a generosa doação de 100 mil francos da época, feita pelo monarca brasileiro do seu próprio bolso, ajudando a viabilizar a fundação do Instituto em Paris em 4 de junho de 1887. Hoje, 135 anos depois, verificamos que a colaboração científica entre o Instituto Pasteur e a Universidade de São Paulo já consolidou, em um primeiro momento, uma plataforma científica. Estes dois parceiros contaram desde o princípio com o sólido apoio do Estado de São Paulo, notadamente por meio da Fundação de Amparo à Pesquisa do Estado, a FAPESP. FAPESP, além de seu valioso apoio institucional, tem concedido financiamentos a projetos, bolsas de estudos e contribuído muito para o equipamento da plataforma científica e continuará a fazê-lo. A declaração de intenções que assinamos hoje é uma iniciativa conjunta que formaliza o relacionamento existente entre o Estado, a USP e o Instituto Pasteur de Paris, criando assim um marco que demonstra a vontade política das três entidades em torno da criação, mais do que de uma plataforma, de uma unidade do Instituto em São Paulo. Estou certo de que seguiremos cooperando e colaborando para deixar um legado cada vez maior na pesquisa e na ciência para os nossos alunos, os nossos pesquisadores, professores e para toda a comunidade acadêmica, legado este cujo maior beneficiário será a população do Estado de São Paulo e do Brasil. Assim procedendo, estaremos também honrando a memória daqueles que se associaram no passado com os olhos postos no futuro. Parabéns à FAPESP pelos seus 60 anos, parabéns ao Instituto Pasteur e à Universidade de São Paulo por essa parceria em nome da ciência. Muito obrigado.
Muito obrigado. Realizado, então, agora a assinatura do termo. Vamos agora para a segunda parte. Solicitamos às autoridades, o senhor embaixador, para que tome assento na plateia, para que a gente dê continuidade, porque agora teremos a assinatura do termo aditivo estendendo o acordo entre a USP, FUSP e Instituto Pasteur para a criação da plataforma científica Pasteur-USP. Convidamos para suas palavras a professora doutora Nízia Trindade de Lima, presidente da Fiocruz, como espectadora do convênio entre USP, FUSP e Instituto Pasteur para a plataforma.
Bom dia a todas e todos. É uma grande honra, como presidente da Fiocruz, estar aqui hoje. Gostaria de cumprimentar o magnífico reitor da USP, professor Carlotti, ao vice-presidente executivo do Instituto Pasteur, François Romaneix. Também cumprimento ao embaixador Massot, representando aqui também o governo do Estado de São Paulo. Cumprimento também o secretário de Saúde do Estado de São Paulo, Jean Gobachet, e também gostaria de fazer uma menção especial a toda a delegação do Instituto Pasteur, a todos que trabalham na plataforma USP Pasteur, uma deferência especial aos colegas Paola Minoprio, Luís Carlos Ferreira, e ao professor Varran, com quem, junto com o professor Zago, tive a oportunidade de compartilhar a história dessa iniciativa. Seguindo a inspiração do professor Zago, vou falar em bad English, mas queria fazer essa saudação inicial em português. So, it's a very special moment, this ceremony, to celebrate the scientific platform Pasteur USP and the 20 years of Louis Pasteur and 60 years of FAPESP. Dear colleagues, dear authorities, thank you all for the invitation to be present in São Paulo for this important day in the history of the USP, Instituto Pasteur Corporation, in the framework of a long-term project should I first declare the strategic importance of this trilateral agreement in Fiocruz, Pasteur, USP, in terms of the potential enhancement of the research conducted by the institutions. Science, technology, and innovation were the foundations for the response to COVID-19 pandemic and many other challenges of our time. At a time when worldwide there have been important discussions regarding preparedness, response, and the recovery in the face of the serious crisis establishing the societies, from the perspective of global health, with equity and justice between countries, the role of institutions and the work of science and technology in health, and the role of networks increasingly needs to be strengthened. It's an honor to also be here, celebrate 20 years of Louis Pasteur in the year in which we also celebrate 150 years of Oswaldo Cruz, another historical coincidence. And 60 years of FAPESP, the first research promotion agency in Brazil, an example and an inspiration for what is done today in all Brazilian states. As a member of the Fiocruz community, as the president of the institution, and as well as member of the scientific board of FAPERJ, the foundation of the state of Rio de Janeiro, and the Brazilian Academy of Science, I feel very happy to share this moment. I think that's important for the cooperation, the scientific cooperation in our country, in the state of São Paulo, and for all the scientific community. Since the conjoint call for projects in 2017, researchers of the three institutions, Fiocruz, USP, Institut Pasteur, presented proposals, and those which were approved did provide a new ecosystem scenario regarding research for health. This was made possible with equitable funding among the three institutions. The work of researchers linked to the platform here in USP has already resulted in the development of many products for health and new knowledge. I would like to highlight that from Fiocruz perspective, and considering that Fiocruz is a national institution with center in all Brazilian regions, it's very impressive that among the projects that our corporation have been promoted, we have projects from different centers in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, in Minas Gerais, Paraná, Pernambuco, and in our very young unit in Ceará. Also is relevant, say, considering the calls for projects in 2017 and 2018, with, that you have important scientific publications and many projects, very important in terms of his impact, infectious disease especially, but think about genomic-wide association studies in cryptococcal virulence, in leishmaniasis, and many other programs. I have said that in being sure that such an initiative today is very important for the trilateral cooperation. Coming back to the project for setting the Institut Pasteur Brazil, I'd like to say some words on the proposed Fiocruz site in this moment in Ceará. This center in Ceará, I think, will, together, this initiative, the scientific platform in São Paulo, help to strengthen our ties, the environment for scientific cooperation, the scientific innovation, think about the results for society, our main proposal. In conclusion, I'd like to highlight again the importance of what has been done on the joint platform and within the scope of the trilateral agreement calls. It's conceivable that in the coming year, you should have the whole scientific conditions to develop the project in Ceará. Together with this platform in São Paulo, I think that we can go with very strength work to the framework of the nascent Instituto Pasteur of Brazil, Instituto Pasteur de Brasil. This leads me to think that we are reaching the time for designing the architecture, but the most important, the basis of ecosystem, coordinated vision, and a coordinating work to together strengthen the presence of Pasteur in Brazil and the historical cooperation among other institutions. I'd like to thank very much the Professor Carlotti for the invitation and to reinforce the commitment of Fiocruz with this initiative. Thank you very much.
Assinam este documento, que é a assinatura do termo aditivo, estendendo o acordo entre USP, FUSP e Instituto Pasteur para a criação da plataforma científica Pasteur-USP. Professor Carlos Gilberto Carlotti Jr., reitor da Universidade de São Paulo, Sr. François Romaneix, presidente executivo do Instituto Pasteur, o professor Marcílio Alves, diretor executivo da FUSP. Como testemunha, convidamos a professora doutora Anísia Trindade de Lima, presidente da Fiocruz. Registramos também a presença do Sr. Rodrigo Benevides, líder da divisão de sequenciamento clínico da nova geração para a América Latina, da Thermo Fisher Scientific. Obrigada a todos. Solicito para que os componentes da mesa tomem assento na plateia para darmos prosseguimento ao evento. Claro. Teremos agora a sessão 2, cerimônia de inauguração do busto de Louis Pasteur. Convidamos o senhor François Romaneix, vice-presidente executivo do Instituto Pasteur, para realizar a inauguração do busto de Louis Pasteur.
Mesdames, Messieurs, c'est évidemment un honneur pour moi et avec une grande émotion que je vais procéder à l'inauguration de ce bus qui a été donné par l'Institut Pasteur à la plateforme Pasteur USP de São Paulo. Peut-être on vient de signer un accord, Monsieur le secrétaire d'État, la préfiguration de l'Institut Pasteur de São Paulo. Louis Pasteur n'est pas n'importe quel membre fondateur pour une institution telle que l'Institut Pasteur. C'est une inspiration pour nous, pour les pasteuriens, pour les scientifiques, pour tout, et aussi pour le Pasteur Network. Cet esprit pasteurien qu'il incarne au travers de la vie qu'a rappelé Christophe, monsieur le consul général adjoint, et les différentes citations qui ont marqué et la vision qui était la sienne de la science et de la coopération internationale. Tous les ans, le 28 septembre, le directeur général de l'Institut Pasteur prononce un discours devant la tombe de Louis Pasteur et la communauté pasteurienne fait le tour du cercueil et va se recueillir sur la tombe du docteur Roux, aussi un illustre pasteurien. C'est la tradition, mais c'est aussi une certaine vision de la science. Professeur Carlotti, vous avez rappelé tout à l'heure dans votre discours l'importance, au travers qu'a donné la pandémie, à la science sur les maladies infectieuses et l'importance de défendre une certaine vision de la science. Une vision de la science fondée sur l'humanisme et fondée sur les faits et sur la réalité. Je crois que cette vision que nous a donnée Louis Pasteur et que nous partageons aujourd'hui, c'est ça qui nous réunit aujourd'hui et qui est le fondement de notre coopération et de l'ensemble des actions qui sont conduites par les différents acteurs de cette coopération. Je vous remercie.
Teremos agora, neste momento, a exibição de um vídeo do professor Stuart Cole, presidente do Instituto Pasteur.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, other commitments prevent me from joining you in São Paulo today, but please be assured that I am there in spirit to celebrate FAPESP's 60th anniversary in the year of the bicentenary of Louis Pasteur's birth. I would like to sincerely congratulate all of you, particularly Professor Zago, Carlotti and Trindade Lima and Ambassador Colle, without whom the partnership between FAPESP, University of São Paulo and the Institut Pasteur would not have happened. Today marks an important development in the Franco-Brazilian cooperation with the Institut Pasteur's bilateral collaboration with the government of São Paulo that I warmly endorse. The signature of the Declaration of Intent between Institut Pasteur, University of São Paulo and the government of São Paulo shows our joint commitment towards formally establishing an Institut Pasteur in the state of São Paulo. Today, we are honoured to donate a bust of Louis Pasteur to the Pasteur USP Scientific Platform, an associate member of the Pasteur Network, in recognition of its truly remarkable achievements in the past 2 years. Indeed, through its contribution to public health during the COVID crisis and its extensive research activity, the platform has become an integral part of the scientific landscape of the state of São Paulo. The bust symbolises the values shared by all members of the Pasteur Network. I will finish by congratulating the exemplary coordination work of Drs. Paulo Minoprio and Luís Carlos de Souza Ferreira. They have shown outstanding dedication to the platform since its conception, and their action is a constant reminder of the importance of collaboration in an increasingly fragmented world. Such fragmentation weakens us all, so it is essential to maintain and develop strong bilateral and multilateral collaborations in the interest of global public health. I know that these values are at the heart of the Pasteur USP scientific platform, and it has been my pleasure to share with you these few words. Please enjoy the celebrations. Bye.
Registramos também a presença de Michele Pena, representando a empresa Illumina, uma das patrocinadoras. Ouviremos agora com o tema O espírito de ser membro da Rede Pasteur e a nova estratégia da Rede Pasteur para melhor se preparar para pandemias, com o professor Amadou Sol, presidente da Rede Pasteur.
Thank you very much. Dear friend, dear colleagues, all authorities and excellencies here, all protocol observed. I've been asked to talk about the spirit of the Pasteur Network. Is it like? I don't think it's working, but I've been asked really to talk about the spirit of being a Pasteur Network member. And rather than giving you too much slides for this first part of my talk, I just want to talk about my own example, because I think it shows quite well and illustrates what being a member of Pasteur Network means. I was born in Africa, where there is one of the oldest in Dakar, one of the oldest Pasteur institutes. where I started being an intern there at 20 years. Did my study in France, and while doing my study, did my part of my bachelor in Pasteur Network. Since then, I did a PhD in Oxford and Paris at the same time. And I was doing that because in the meantime, I joined the Pasteur Network as one of the members. What I'm trying to say by that is being a member gives huge opportunity to your young scientists to do and work in the clear spirit of what Pasteur himself had tried to cultivate by making science a universal sort of value. And second, give an opportunity to the best mind in the world to unite, and by uniting, try to control and tackle the world's most serious epidemic. I was just starting with this PhD because it gave me an opportunity while I was in Oxford to meet a Brazilian colleague who turned out to be a professor at the University of São Paulo and gave me the opportunity to visit for the first time Brazil in 1994. By doing that, that was my first visit for Fiocruz. At that time, the Pasteur Network was giving an opportunity for anybody to spend 2 years in whatever institute member of the network. Because of that stay, I really fought very hard to come and spend 2 years in Brazil. It didn't work out, but I got another opportunity. I went to Asia, where I spent 2 years of my life doing arbovirus, doing another disease, learning other cultures. After that, when I came back to my place, still, the network gave me an option to go and stay in the US for some time, learning about epidemics, learning about new pathogens, learning about all sorts of technology to tackle disease. When I came back to Senegal, while I was still working there, I have to tackle one of the world's worst epidemics, Ebola. Zika took me to Brazil again in 2016, where I work with people like Patricia, like Luis Carlos, Jean-Pierre, Edison. All these people work together on fighting Zika here in Brazil. And I came with my team. It was several people. After that epidemic, we've been called by Mexico because of what we've done in Brazil. So we spent a whole month in Mexico supporting them for Zika. On the way back, I had to work with Cabo Verde, another Portuguese-speaking countries from my experience here. And after we saw that now it was done for Zika, once again, we have another SARS-CoV-2 actually epidemics. I'm saying that because I think being member of the Pasteur Network, you can really summarize it that you will have for your young guys, your scientists, and the people that are willing to support the world in global health. Huge opportunity to meet amazing people, amazing culture, amazing scientists, and really make a difference for your country and make an impact in your society, for the science, and that's what it means. And for me, it's really, if you want to have a meaningful life, this sort of institute can give you whatever you need in these regards, as long as you are motivated and you want to do these things. So I don't think I need to elaborate more on that. I just wanted to give the example. I'm talking specifically to young guys here. That's with this, what's happening today, this 3 years celebration is probably a beginning of an amazing adventure and an opportunity to fight the next pandemic. So now I'm going to move to the second part of my talk, which is what do we do now in the network to prepare for the next pandemic? Now, why it's important to have this Pasteur network? I think we've talked among directors and people and discussed and say, what should we do now that we're thinking about setting up a new networks? SARS-CoV-2 have really shaken the world, and everybody keeps saying now we have to have a new world. Talking about that, people agree on very few things that Pasteur Network is uniquely placed actually to do at the global level. First is the global outreach. I already told you, gave you my example. With the network, you can reach actually the 5 continents and work in all the different places within the same spirit of public health, research, education going together. Second, research that you can synergize in putting together in the very same area to tackle disease now in the convention way, meaning that you put entomologists, virologists, epidemiologists, all of them doing their research to try to understand what's happening for a new disease like Zika or SARS-CoV-2. The third thing is a flagship representativity in all these different areas. I mean, you see very few places where you have such a level of representativity in terms of diversity, in terms of impact, in terms of making sure what you do makes sense for the people and the citizen. And the last thing we were talking about, besides the impact, the participative governance. We want something more open with a network, and we want actually to push the center of the gravity where it happened at the international level, meaning in most of the developing countries. So, of the next few slides, I just want to tell you quickly what I'm going to be talking about. First, a new governance for new challenge that has been reflected by the people in charge of Pasteur and that we also share to try to make it happen. The second is the vision we're having with this and just some opportunities and work we're doing to prepare for the next pandemic. Now, if we talk about the new governance, it has been really designed with a foundation, which is really going to be focusing on the financial entity, as a financial entity, to become a dedicated vehicle where you can manage assets, do fundraising, and make sure you can interact with donors and partners. Why this is important? Because obviously today is not just about raising the fund, but being sure through the foundation you can leverage all these celebrities that Pasteur Network has, but also working with all different local partners like USP here or FAPESP. And the second part of the governance is really the association. We gather all the different institutes, being more an operational entity with a strategic vision, where really the idea is to boost synergy, capture opportunity, and making sure through networking and advocacy you can deliver this mission and the message that Pasteur has been talking about through science. Now we have this board, which is really shown in these pictures with the different people that meet on a regular basis at least twice a year. And through that board, most of the decisions are taken. And it's really important to understand in that board the different regions are all represented. Two people for each region. And actually for the America region also, we have two different representatives. So the reason why we build it that way, we just want to make sure that besides being a governance body, we're reflecting having this Pasteur Network as a worldwide platform where it's about excellence in science, in public health, and education, and focusing very much on the local priorities, meaning that the real word about being local, meaning impactful at the global level, while being meaningful at the local level, is really what is in mind. And in all these different institute Pasteur, you would see at least the three major pillars where you try to understand what's happening through research and having good science, translate that into real impactful in public health, and make sure that you have the workforce that would over time build the sustainability that you need actually to make this network delivering its mission, which is really supporting people in public health and delivering the Pasteurian values. Now, one thing we have as the main asset and strengths in this network is really the diversity. There is very, very few places where you can move when it comes to science, from looking at hosts and vectors, whether it's mosquitoes or bats or rodents, moving into different environments all over the world. And through that, targeting population through research and understanding really the pathogens. This is what we do round the clock in 5 different continents with such a different diversity that make it really unique in terms of seeing science in a way that very, very few institutions have an opportunity to see it. And I just want to give one example where at the very beginning of the SARS-CoV-2, what happened in December 2019, where the first case happened in China. Very few days after we have the identification of the SARS-CoV-2 sequence. And in January, this was in Asia, we have these Hong Kong colleagues that shared their first PCR protocol within the network. It's still in January. Very few people in the world has these capacities to do the diagnosis. And because of that, in February 7th in 2020, we at Pasteur in Dakar were in a position to train 25 African countries to be able to do these diagnostics. And this happened within less than 6 weeks. And each of them went back with reagent and the capacity. And most of the countries that came to visit were the ones that detect the first SARS-CoV-2 cases in their countries. And that's what the power of this can bring very quickly. And we have in early March a first line of pandemic response. Never ever in the history of public health and epidemic in Africa, this happened. So it just to show how synergizing and leveraging this level of diversity, geographically speaking, scientifically speaking, you can have a huge impact in a continent like Africa. But I'm sure we have so many other examples that we can show in other parts of the world. Now, what are we trying to do now? What is the vision we have in this? We believe that to be that platform focusing on excellence in science, in public health and education, we want Pasteur Network to really promote global innovation hub. And in this regard, I think São Paulo, Rio, and all the environment in Brazil are really amazing opportunity for the network actually to be a major player in Southern America. And this global innovation would have the capacity to become regional player with global ambition and outreach. Make sure that they capture the opportunity and deliver the innovation solution. I know that you have here a platform called Innova, which is really, really good in terms of innovation being in a position to shift the course actually of the disease when we come to epidemic and high consequence pathogens, and really address the challenging health needs. And the reason why it's important to address them is just usually it may be at the beginning, as I was saying, very relevant locally, but turn out to become a massive problem at the global level. We start working in Zika in 1968 because we were doing surveillance in Zika in Senegal on a systematic way. And while I was studying and working with my colleague from Brazil here, we start working on evolution on Zika. And because of that project of doing evolution of Zika virus, when Zika hit Brazil, he called me and said, Amadou, I think the monkey virus you guys were working on is becoming a problem here in Brazil. So that connection is quite important, where you have some help that would actually help becoming relevant. And because of that, that knowledge was translated into value, because diagnostic would transfer and more work was done later and turned out to fantastic paper with Patricia on nature. Now, through this global hub, actually, what we're trying to do is to have a dynamic and very interconnected web of science and scientists. Just to give example of main topics on which we work, one is data science and bioinformatics. In biology now, biology become less and less important, while data science, bioinformatics, analyzing data is becoming a huge problem. So in order to try that shift and be still relevant to the science we're doing and be impactful, now we have to talk to physicists, we have to talk to data scientists, we have to talk to bioinformaticians, and this is becoming very important. In Southern America, you have in Uruguay, you have in many places in Brazil. I think one of the specialty of this university here has been bioinformatics, which is important to understand the virus evolution. The second important aspect is we have to look at availability of vaccination, biologic, and cell therapeutics. Because unless we have health commodity, fighting disease and getting ready for the next one is a deep, deep problem and a deep, deep challenge. And because of that, we all have seen the inequity that exists in the world, particularly in Africa and Southern America, where vaccine was not accessible, even though some capacity exists. So it's quite important. The third topic would be epidemic intelligence, obviously putting together information, collecting them, analyzing them in the right way, and deploying them not only to deal with present, but also for the future. And last thing, in health commodity, thinking ahead in trying actually to do drug discoveries, and from the new virus that may happen, have an approach. For that, we have also thinking about working with other groups, and this is just one of the examples that we keep talking about when it comes to vaccine. We can have several donors, people from the industry working together with some public and private partnership, and build some research center for vaccine. This is something we're working right now in Dakar, or also thinking about working together in Korea and other places in the world to try to build what may be the next and future, actually, medicine, drugs, or vaccine. We have decided actually to work on 4 major work streams. Number one, actually being a mobility approach. I don't know whether you're familiar with what is called an Erasmus program in Europe, where all the students are actually moving from one university to another. We want to do that in the network, but not only for the students, but also for scientists. The purpose of this is really building that community and that link that would be exemplified by what I was saying. A friend in 1993 playing football and soccer with me in UK turned out to become a partner that would be relevant to a pandemic like SARS-CoV-2 or something like that. So that mobility would build that lifetime sort of interaction that would help, and also being an opportunity to interact. The second program that we're working on is to try to make sure we're building a grand challenge approach. Some of you are not familiar with it. Grand challenge is more like something that has been made popular by the foundation, the Gates Foundation, which is a lot about understanding what are the main challenges in public health or global health, and how do we tackle it and make sure that we put some sort of incentivized project in that. And for instance, actually today we are reflecting with some partners on that. In Southeast Asia is very interested about taking the main challenge like AMR. Africa is thinking of emerging disease. Many people think that precision medicine should be the next frontier of medicine, so we should focus on that. But the idea is by building that, we would be in a position very quickly actually to anticipate what may be a problem in the future. I'm going to talk now about the 2 other programs that I'm going to be detailing a little bit more. One being the preparedness and disease intelligence, and the second one being what we call diagnostic, therapeutic, and vaccine manufacturing. Because to come back to this inequity I was mentioning, the network can probably provide quite a lot of information. But coming to the preparedness and disease intelligence, anybody now in the world agrees that sequencing is going to change the world. As we can see, between December and February, you could have a diagnostic, a vaccine gets started, or a messenger making possible having a vaccine within a year. So genomic surveillance is becoming the standard, and that's why as a network being spread out around the world and having all this capacity to put together epidemiologists next to sequence people with capacity to sequence and analyze what those sequences mean is a huge asset. And for that, I'm just going to give a couple of examples. This is what WHO called the Global Pandemic Radar, which is the International Pathogen Surveillance Network. And specifically on this 4th objective, is trying actually to maximize connectivity for timely valid added in the broader surveillance architecture. The purpose is any place in the world, if we can quickly detect any pathogens, it would allow to have tools, local containments, and sound alarm to the rest of the world. And that's why genomic surveillance is important. And for that, you can leverage all these different networks that exist so far through WHO or different partners. Whether you're talking about the EDPLN, which is the Emerging Dangerous Pathogen Lab Network, or you want to talk about the surveillance network for measles and rubella, or you want to talk about GORN, which is more a partnership of different institutions that can be deployed, et cetera, et cetera. Putting those networks together, if you look at the Pasteur network, many of our institutions are actually very much involved with that. But I'm just going to set one example, which is on COVID-19 and what happened in Africa. If you look at this is the main player that has been working with us just for actually Africa. WHO, African Union, GIZAID, which is more doing bioinformatics. ECOWAS, which is the West Africa Health Organization, Africa CDC, our network, obviously, African Society of Laboratory Medicine, and funding from the Islamic Development Bank allows very quickly to be involved in different projects. One that was quite topical was the one that happened actually called Repair, funded by the French Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs, that helped to connect all the Pasteur network teams in Africa, and many others that was supported by EU and others. Through those different initiatives, it has been possible very quickly to deploy just by Institut Pasteur in Dakar and the other people of the network, 17 different countries. Among them, you have IP Côte d'Ivoire, a Pasteur network. You have also Guinea-Conakry, a Pasteur network. You have Cameroon, a Pasteur network. You can have Tunisia, a Pasteur network. And you can have Madagascar, a Pasteur network member. And you have IP Bangui, which is also a Pasteur network. Meaning connecting them all and providing this information on a regular basis could allow to see how the virus was moving around the world. And having this is extremely useful, not only for SARS-CoV-2, but you build the capacity, the process to be able actually to leverage any other pathogens. And this is how we can be prepared, and by increasing the granularity of such networks and upgrading it to the different other pathogens, you build one of the world's strongest human system in surveillance for genomics. Now, out of that, what can you do? Obviously, sequencing is just a starting point. You can definitely, through those information, study transmissibility, risk of infections, disease severity, diagnostic, how to adapt them with the variant, and even vaccine. So just by this example, this is what we can do in terms of preparedness. I'm just going to finish with talking about the vaccine, the last part, because obviously now with messenger RNA opportunity, CEPI is moving actually to have a 100 days agenda to make available a vaccine. We're not talking about a year now, but 100 days. So what can we say in these regards? If you look at this slide from CEPI, what you could see clearly in Southeast and Western Pacific, that's where you have most of the capacity for end-to-end actually capacity for vaccine manufacturing. Obviously, most of this is India, China, and Korea. In all the others, you have capacity, but not that much. And you could see Latin America, there is some drug substance or drug product happening here, but R&D, and from the survey they did, obviously Africa is lagging completely behind. What can we do from that in trying to build that sort of opportunity to get prepared for the next pandemic? I just wanted to come back and see the opportunities we have here as a Pasteur network. Among right now, beyond China, India, and South Korea major producer, you have 16 developing countries that hand-to-end vaccine manufacturing capacity. But obviously, many of these are in the Pasteur network. You look at Brazil, obviously, Biomanguinhos, and you have Institute Butantan also has been cited as one of these 14 vaccine manufacturers. If you look again about other area of the world, you have Iran, where you have a Pasteur Institute, another member of our network. If you look at Senegal, you have Institut Pasteur in Dakar. So what this means is that through those capacity, you can leverage quite large capacity into responding when vaccine is in shortage. And the good thing is also some of them are already pre-qualified as a WHO pre-qualified, meaning that they know the system and they have experience that can be leveraged into pandemic context. And if you just focus only among African players, look at all we have here as potential players that are already in this vaccine business. Among all these 10 players, you have one, Pasteur Dakar, second, Tunisia, third, which is Institut Pasteur in Algeria and Morocco. So we are one of the institutions that have the most important player in that field. Because you were talking about importation, packaging, fill and finish, drug substance, or R&D, which give a huge opportunity to get ready. Most of these different institutions are right now preparing to expand their capacity. and become key player in terms of preparedness. And this is possible because of the network, the spirit, and the capacity to work together and developing. And that's how powerful it is. And for me, I think that's one of the message I wanted just to carry. It's about being impactful through knowledge to the society. I'll stop there. Thank you very much for your attention.
Convidamos agora todos para realizar a visita da plataforma científica Pasteur, USP. A entrada é pelo terceiro andar.